And another member of our group who I'll mention is Cindy Farley, who just graduated yesterday. So all her family were there, and she couldn't be here. Cindy and I work together basically because we all have treaty rights, things like that. That means we are nations, and therefore we should look at an international scope. And so her research involved UNDRIP, UN Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights, the Hank Adams Trail of Broken Treaties 20-point position paper, and the Mystic Declaration, which Dr. Wildcat was a part of also, which greatly influenced our perspective as far as trying to put together an international tribunal, but also just with our principles that we came up with, which were inspired by, of course, and Dr. Wildcat and David Wilkins, Cornell Purity, just to name a few, and other indigenous philosophers and thinkers that really contributed to this whole piece. We first had to define what's a being. And we came up with any species, plant, animal, ecosystem, knowledge, area, natural community, and all natural entities. Mother Earth and the universe are alive in our beings. And we're all a part of that. And then we also came up with a couple new terms besides we all heard of inherent rights and things like that. But we also came up with a term that inspired by Vine Deloria and David Wilkins, matured rights. Rights acquired through the fulfillment of responsibilities, through respect, reciprocity, and growth. And this growth being spiritual and place, because we grow in our places that we take up space in. And I'll read a little bit. I have notes, sorry, because it's a lot that we have written down for this. And it's, as any indigenous document, it should be flowing and it should be fluid and never static. So it's going to always change. And that's what one of our goals, too, was when making this. We wanted to get just the basic principles that we all share together. And then you put your own tribal stamp on it. You put your own cultural beliefs on top of that and make it your own. To do away with BIA constitutions and things like that. We need to get away from their train of thought and decolonize language. I mean, we'll take their English language and decolonize it, make it our own. Sorry. We human beings are a part of the living earth, which is our mother. She is our source of life. She must be respected at all costs. We are experiencing existence with our mother earth. We learn from experience, all experience. We learn from our mother earth. All beings are unique and equal in existence. All beings have inherent personal sovereignty. And that was just part of our preamble, just basically, indigenous thoughts of just returning back to our original instructions that were given to us in our creation stories and other stories. And so we move on from there. Our Mother Earth shall be respected. Respected is needed with all beings, and respect our relatives. Because that's one thing to think about is I personally say a being is down to the molecular level, because if a particle is in two spots at once, obviously they're communicating with the other and it knows it's being observed. So, but to think about that and then think about what makes like a cell phone, all these things come together for that. And we're a part of this also because it came from the earth. But again, we have to go back to original instructions, but was that done respectfully? Was that done in honor? And what are you doing with it? So that's our main thing was with these, is that we need to have respect for everything, because everything is our relative and we're all interconnected and intertwined. All organic and inorganic beings are unique and share an inherent responsibility, inherent right, and mature right to live in peace in respect to cycles of life, conservation, integrity, and purpose. Because that, as far as once you grow and find your purpose, we all have a purpose, then we mature. But I mean, that's an ongoing thing, just like everything. Every being, every being has responsibility to protect all cycles inherent, inherent right to space. I say this is from 1D and beyond. String theory, there's 11, possibly more dimensions. I see the world as layered upon layers, and that waves, communication, all forms are experienced and experienced influence that we all share. And then one thing is that we talk about, everybody talks about freedom, blah, blah, blah. Freedom is an inherent right of all beings, thus protected through maturity. It is the responsibility and mature right of all beings to see that freedom is not impeded. Restorative justice. Now, this is something that we haven't gone into too much detail with, because we want other tribes to look at their own instructions, find how they practice reciprocity. But we were mainly looking at Dene, and who else was it?
Dene, Iroquois.
Yeah, Dene and Iroquois mainly. And so we were just different ways of peacekeeping and just trying to formulate ideas for that, because to decolonize the settler colonial government that they gave us, we have to look outside of it. Indigenous peoples have the responsibility, matured right, and inherent right to traditions, religions, spiritual customs, and ceremonies. And seeing this kind of falls into what Robert Warrior calls intellectual sovereignty, because we've had intellectual sovereignty since time immemorial, but it's just through colonizations, things tend to get picked at and skewed and perverted. So it's a time that we return to these original instructions so we can prosper again. Freedom from assimilation and from other modes that seek to change, pervert, or destroy our inherent culture. Inherent rights to name and communicate for name, places, and then with naming, you have to have respect and consensus. And that leads us to communication. All beings have an inherent right and mature right to communicate in the manner they see fit. Now, this comes with maturity and being in place and being in that time, in that whole area. This includes spirituality, customs, traditions, cultural activities, and art. All beings have the responsibility, inherent right, and mature right to knowledge, intellectual sovereignty. All spaces are knowledge areas and need to be respected. Intellectual sovereignty equals original instructions. And then here's another thing that has always been quoted throughout history is you control people by controlling their food. And so we need to take food sovereignty seriously by growing traditional foods and returning to traditional diets. I come from the Gila River Indian community, which has skyrocketed in diabetes cases, and there have even been papers on it, things like that. But to combat that, we are growing traditional foods, and those who partake in that and actually exercise are getting better. But it's still a major problem. But see, if we can control our food, we will help our people in the long run. And then here's something that is, because we were, like earlier, everyone's talking about economics and things like that with traditional trade and things like that. But we also have to remember traditional respectful harvesting and hunting, as far as that reciprocity, giving things back, don't take too much. And it says, all economic ventures, it must be recognized that all existence is in a relationship, and we are all relatives. Because just like any relationship, you have to nurture it, and it's ongoing and ever changing, so you have to change with it. Consensus brought by reciprocity is the goal in all actions. All beings involved has inherent personal and personal autonomy, and a census must be found by all beings involved. This comes with maturity. And the main goal with this was to almost make more like, not like a pledge or a Bill of Rights. It was just more to tear down those walls that we have common ground together. These are core beliefs that we all can share and build on. And just like when federal Indian law, it affects all of us, and we all should be at the table. Thank you.